When I was in high school, my parents used to fight all the time. It was very overwhelming, and even more so for a 17-year-old teenager. So one night, I just couldn't take it and stormed out of the house. We lived in a coastal area, and whenever I felt overwhelmed or frustrated for some reason, I used to go for a walk on the beach because, for some reason, the cool breeze coming from the sea really managed to calm me down when I was under stress. On the shore of the beach, in a somewhat secluded stretch of the new housing complexes, there was an old abandoned house, and whenever I went for a walk to get some oxygen, I felt very attracted to it. But I had never gone inside, even though I had thought of doing it many times, but that night it seemed like the perfect occasion, since I was very upset, and besides, I had something hidden with me. So I thought I could smoke inside that house while the policemen patrolled the beach at night. This was a 2-story wooden house, very old, but it was located in a privileged place, since from there you could see the entire coast. It was a very beautiful night view. Trees were growing around the property, leaving it somewhat hidden from view. Although the door was locked, I found a broken window that allowed me to enter. This window led to a small bedroom on the first floor, where there was a worn bed, a broken chair, and a lot of dust and garbage lying on the floor. From that room, there was a long hallway that led to the stairs leading up to the second-floor rooms. I've been on many camping trips and solo trips, so being alone in that old abandoned house in the middle of the night didn't really bother me at first. So I just grabbed a box that was in the corner of the room and sat on it, placing it near the window where I entered the house. The wind played with my hair, and as it blew away the smoke from my cigarette, I finally began to feel my troubled mind begin to clear. That's when I heard someone's whispering voice. I looked around the room in search of whoever it was that spoke to me, but after looking in all directions, I failed to find anything. So I ignored it, thinking it was a trick my mind played on me. The waves of the sea, accompanied by the moonlight, made the view from the window too relaxing and beautiful. It was a sight worth portraying. I don't know how long I sat there, but my attention was diverted by a most unexpected event when a man's whispering voice came close to my ears. "May I take the lighter?" I immediately stood up and turned toward the sound. I play basketball in school, so I'm a pretty healthy and strong, and I also know how to defend myself, I replied in surprise. "What the fuck?" That's when I noticed a tall, rather thin man standing in the middle of the room with an awkward smile on his face. At my sudden defensive gesture, he was startled too, which I could tell from his face. He said again in the same low voice, "Sorry to bother you, I actually just found this abandoned house and thought I'd spend the night here." At that moment, I tried to focus my eyes properly in his direction, and then I realized from his appearance that this man was probably a homeless man. His face vividly indicated that he was very weak and had not eaten for probably days. I said, "It's okay. I don't live here either. I just came to smoke in this place. Here's my lighter." And I handed him the lighter. He responded with the same awkward smile, saying, "Thanks, I'm Nestor Carter. How about you?" I replied in a disinterested voice, "I'm Kevin. I live a block away." The man gave me back my lighter and went to sit on the bed, then said, "If you want to stay in this room tonight, I can leave the house, no problem." I looked out to sea once more and replied that it would not be necessary, and that I would leave later. At some point I asked him how he had gotten in, to which he replied that he came up to the house from the back and entered from the second-floor balcony. We started talking because he seemed harmless. The man took the first puff on his cigarette and coughed a little. At that point, I told him that that house has been empty for a long time, so even if he were to stay and live there, no one would bother. The man laughed in a low but squeaky voice and said, "You don't seem to know about the history of this house." A sense of curiosity came over me, so I asked, "What history?" And the man exhaled clouds of smoke and said, "This house once belonged to an elderly couple. The couple had no children, Some people close to them say that this feeling of emptiness created problems between them. The wife used to fight all the time. She became so bitter that the husband often spent the night outside the house. One night it was raining heavily. The husband came home after being very drunk and shouted his wife's name loudly. He expected many hurtful rants from his toxic wife, but this time the house was in deep silence. No matter how many times he called her name, she did not respond. So he ran to the upstairs bedroom and found the wife's lifeless body hanging from the ceiling. Even though his wife made his life miserable, he still loved her, in his own way. So having lost her forever, the husband also committed suicide in that same room. Hearing the story, I smiled and said, "Well, every house has a story. It's horrible to hear, but that happened a long time ago. Why would that be a problem now?" The man coughed quietly again and said, "People say the wife's spirit still haunts this place looking for her husband. I even heard footsteps on the stairs in the hallway around midnight. That's why I only choose to spend the night in this house when I have nowhere else to go." At that point, the bedroom door was open and my eyes wandered down the dark hallway. And to be honest, I got goosebumps. But then I told her that these are all made-up stories and no offense. But you can hear a lot of things when you smoke what you're smoking. I chuckled to lighten the mood, breaking the awkward silence in the room. Then I asked him how the room upstairs looked. The man told me, messy and dirty, but in better condition than the one we were in. I told him that I had never been upstairs, and that in fact I had entered the house that very night for the first time. To my surprise, the man immediately stood up and said in a panicked voice, "You should never go upstairs, she won't like it." Before I could ask any more questions, the man ran up to me and said in a frightened tone, "Do you hear?" That this guy was so close to me also scared me a little, but then he slowly turned his eyes to the hallway and said, "She's coming. I hear her footsteps." I was about to give him a shove for making such stupid jokes, but before I could, all my senses went on alert when I heard the sound of footsteps in the hallway. It felt like someone was coming down the stairs. My ears couldn't believe what I was hearing. I threw the cigarette out the window and got up from the box where I was sitting. The footsteps were getting closer, and this time the man grabbed my hand and said, "Come on. We must hide under the bed or she will come." I was already drugged, and these sudden events were enough to shut down my rational senses. And instead of jumping out the window, which is what I would have done with my 5 senses functioning, I don't know why I agreed with this half-strange and out-of-it stranger. But he crawled under the bed and I did the same. I was lying under there on the bed, and my heart was pounding while the man was to my left with his eyes wide open and frightened. He also motioned me to be absolutely silent by putting his thin, dirty finger to his lips. The sounds of footsteps were getting closer and closer every minute. I felt like my heart was going to burst out of my mouth at any moment. Now I could see the floor under the bed and my eyes were glued to the door, because I expected someone to walk in at any moment. Now I was trying to convince myself that it was all in my head, but the footsteps were so real, it was hard to convince myself of my own conjecture, if that makes any sense. However, what happened next ended all my doubts. A pair of feet in women's heels entered the room. I turned to the left and saw that the man was not there. I thought to myself, damn, he ran away leaving me alone in this haunted house. I was so distracted by the sound of footsteps, I didn't notice when the man secretly slipped out of the room. The pair of feet began to walk across the room. At that point, I really had no courage left to go out and face the ghost of a woman, so I kept quiet. The feet went to the window and then turned toward the door. I was about to leave and was relieved, thinking that once I did, I would be out of there for good. But right on the threshold, those feet stopped. Now they turned toward the bed and a woman's voice reached my ear. "I can see you." My face turned pale. Beads of sweat beaded on my forehead, and I began to pant heavily as those feet moved towards the bed. At that point, I closed my eyes, and when it came in front of me, I knew this woman was going to look under the bed now and might, I don't know, kill me or something. I was just hoping to get out of here alive, and as all kinds of chaotic thoughts were swirling around in my head, I heard the woman's voice again, and now she said, "Who the hell are you?" I opened my eyes, gasping in terror, and then I saw an old woman looking at me with piercing eyes and said in a chorus voice, "Get out right now. You stupid teenagers, you have turned my house into a smoking area." I slowly came out from under the bed and stood there with a clueless look on my face, looking at the lady. She didn't look like a ghost at all. I explained the whole situation to the woman and told her how a man named Nestor Carter scared me with some stupid ghost story. The woman was even angrier now and said, "Is this some kind of joke? Are you trying to be clever?" I couldn't understand her words, so I kept looking at her blankly. Then she said out loud, "My husband, Nestor Carter, has been dead for a long time. Every time I catch a teenager smoking in my old house, he or she tells me the same stupid story. Don't you people have anything better to do in life other than annoy an old lady by ransacking the house she is trying to sell?" My head began to pound hard, as if someone was sweeping the ground beneath my feet. This time I was with a ghost and I couldn't think anymore. I immediately ran out of the house. The woman was still standing near the window and cursing me for playing such a stupid prank on her. A few days later, I was talking to my dad when I asked him about the beach house. My dad told the exact same story that Nestor Carter told me. That night I added that many people had seen the ghost of the husband. At the time, I was sure that the man who introduced himself as Nestor Carter was the dead husband. But my dad added a little more detail to the story. He said that many people in town had claimed to see the ghost of an old woman also, who lurks around the house at night, and if you meet her, she will introduce herself as Nestor Carter's wife and tell you that she is trying to sell the house. In other words, that night I encountered not one but two ghosts of the abandoned house. I still can't believe it, but the fact is that I have never gone back to that place, nor do I think I ever will. A few years ago, I was living in a small town, but my family decided to move about 4 hours away, supposedly to get us away from all the drama there. While my parents were out of town picking out houses, I brought my best friend and called my cousins to take a little road trip. The place I wanted to go was practically off limits, but we were daredevils and wanted to experience something scary. We chose a place that was 2 or 3 hours away from town. It was an old abandoned hospital, and supposedly this place was haunted. Its history itself was very scary. This was a psychiatric center where they kept mentally ill people, obviously. But there were rumors about how some of the patients were mistreated and tortured by the people in charge of the center. But as the population dwindled, they eventually ended up closing the center. Over the years, the building began to rot and succumb to nature. And now it was just an old dilapidated shell, but full of stories that we were eager to discover. We decided to leave around 11 p.m., so we were able to get there around 2 a.m. The car ride was a lot of fun, and we were all very excited to see what we would find in the building. We arrived around 2:43 a.m. and stopped at the beginning of the dirt road that led there. We were stopped at that spot for a few minutes, contemplating whether we should really do this or not, because in addition to having arrived a little later than planned, we also had a bad feeling. But after 10 minutes of looking at a dark road hesitating, we decided to continue. After all, we were already there. As we made our way along the dusty, overgrown road, it seemed like it would never end. The grass was overgrown, and there were branches everywhere. Everything was completely dark, and we could barely see the road. We finally made it to the building, and once we did, we all stared in awe. The place was huge. The roof was rotten and vines were growing all over the walls. In the middle of the parking lot, or what was once the parking lot, had a giant old water fountain which had also grown vines. The surroundings were so dark, we could only see what the headlights were illuminating. We turned off the car, got out and started walking towards the building, and as we did, the first thing I noticed was pentagrams and graffiti scattered all over the walls. We continued walking further inside and climbed the stairs, which was very difficult, considering that they were practically non-existent. Then we climbed another staircase and reached what was left of the roof. We looked around and noticed a small light in the front of the building. This looked like the light from a telephone. We called out to see if anyone else was there, but no one answered and the light faded as quickly as it appeared. My cousin told us to follow him into another room so he could make sure we were safe. But for a moment, I had a terrible feeling. I walked to another room following my cousin as he told us. This was the room right next to the previous one. I looked around and saw old mattresses and graffiti. I heard my cousins talking to each other, but suddenly I heard a faint sound. It was as if someone threw a stone at the window of the room I was in. It was strange, but I didn't think much of it and kept looking around. I met up with my cousins and my friend, and we decided to go down to the basement to inspect. Once we got there, we decided to take a break. First of all, because of the effort it took us to get there, as the stairs were practically shattered. But also, the air inside the building felt very thick, and the smell of old and musty didn't make it any easier. We sat there in the middle of the basement catching our breath, until suddenly we heard a voice from the back of the room. We all tensed up immediately and stood there staring at each other in the darkness. Personally, I was too scared to move and felt that whatever was there would come after me and attack me. 1,000 terrifying scenarios went through my head at that moment. Then my cousin, who was the oldest of us all and always acted as the protector of the group, walked over slowly and shone his flashlight into the area. The light reached the other end of the room, and that's when we saw someone squatting down facing the wall. My cousin started backing away slowly with the light still on, while we all had our eyes fixed on the guy. Once he got back to where we were, he picked us up and we started to walk out of the room. Once we got outside, he yelled at the man asking if he was okay. The man turned around and stared at him. There was a moment of tense silence before the man started letting out wild screams running towards us. At that moment, everything went into chaos. My cousins, my friend, and I started running and screaming in terror with no idea where to head. But we ended up running out a window, as it was the only escape route we could find nearby. We ended up in the woods behind the building. I remember running as fast as my legs would go with my heart racing and sure that I would die that night, as I could hear the man running right behind me. My cousins were way ahead of me. Then I saw their flashlights slowly go out. I hit so many trees that my whole body started to hurt, but finally I managed to catch up with my cousins in a clearing, and at one point I stopped hearing the man chasing me. We finally managed to find a trail and started following it, trying to find our way back to the car, but ended up going in the wrong direction. After walking for an hour into the forest, we decided to turn back and try to go in the other direction. It was a tiring walk back, but we finally saw the building again and sighed with relief that we were not far from the car. But as we were finally approaching the car so we could get the hell out of there, we heard a rustling sound in one of the bushes next to the building, and before we could react, a stone flew out and hit my friend. That's when we saw the same man from a few moments ago emerge from the bush and run towards us again. Once again, we started running away from this guy who knows what he wanted from us, but this time we were running in the direction of the car. The man was coming very close to us, but fortunately we had a chance to get into the car and lock the doors before he reached us. Once we were all inside the car, my cousin turned it on, and as he did so, the headlights came on as well, only to show us this deranged guy running towards the car ready to hit the windows with a glass bottle. At that instant, we heard a collective gasp, followed by the screeching of the car's tires, which my cousin accelerated at full speed to get us out of there as soon as possible. All the way home, we were silent. I think we all felt the same sense of shock. My body was shaking and my heart was still racing. I must say that after that day, we never again had any interest in exploring any other abandoned places. A few months ago, some friends invited me to spend a weekend in the countryside. They rented a cabin around a forest, and the idea was to hunt and enjoy some healthy time outdoors. Unfortunately, when I was halfway there, I realized that my car had almost run out of gas. This was an area that had virtually no signs of civilization, the classic middle of nowhere. We were in the middle of spring and it was around 5 in the afternoon, so at least I had a few more hours of daylight. I drove a couple of kilometers and saw that there was a small gas station on the side of the road. I thought, great, I'm saved. I stopped the car at the desolate little station, but to my horror, there was no gas. This is unbelievable, I said to myself with all the irony in the world and cursing my bad luck. I looked around and saw that there was a small building there, obviously an office. I peeked through the window and saw that there was someone inside, thank goodness. This was a man with long hair and a beard, dressed in work clothes but very dirty, and when he saw me, he came out of the place. "Hey buddy, do you need gas?" he asked me, and I noticed then that he was also missing some teeth, but at least he looked friendly. "Looks like you're out of gas," he said to me. "Oh really? Does it look like that?" "Hell no. No dude, I just like to stop at gas stations for pure hobby." Yes, maybe it was a bit rude, my answer, but that was such an absurd question that I couldn't find another way to answer it. Fortunately, he took it with humor and laughed. Then he told me that almost no one was passing through those roads, so the supply was a little late, and told me that the new truck would arrive the following week. "You've got to be kidding me. I need to meet some friends today, and my destination is still about an hour away," I told him, and asked him if he had a cell phone I could use, since mine was absolutely dead in that place. I needed to inform my friends to come to my aid, I asked, but he said, "Sorry buddy, I don't have a phone. However, there is a small town not too far from here, about a 30-minute walk. I can give you the address. Mostly older people live there, and I think some of them have phones and could give you the help," he told me kindly. I took him at his word, obviously, as I guess that's my only option. The man at the gas station told me which way to go. His instructions were precise, and I was walking very fast because I was anxious. So I got there in about 20 minutes, and wow, this town really was even smaller and more depressing than I imagined. The only car I saw was an old van parked in the middle of the street. I saw people looking at me from inside their houses. I knocked on the door of one of the houses asking for help and asking if I could borrow a phone to make an emergency call. I even offered to pay for the call. But who was there? Was an old woman looking at me through the window. But she was looking at me with cold, expressionless eyes like I was a statue. It was extremely creepy. So I gave up on that particular house and tried another one. But I couldn't believe what I saw or who I saw. I swear it was exactly the same woman. It couldn't be the same, of course, but even the clothes were very similar. And again, she had the same reaction. She was looking at me through the window with complete indifference. At that moment, I thought, damn. And I was so looking forward to my longed-for weekend outdoors with my friends. But my luck was about to change when I saw an old man on the road walking towards me. He was smiling and at least looked normal. "Good afternoon, stranger. What brings you to our little town that has no name? Are you just passing through?" the man said to me as he approached. "Ah, thank goodness. I tried to talk to some of your neighbors, but they weren't as friendly as you, unfortunately. By the way, are those two women in those two houses twin sisters? I asked. Ah, yes. Yes, they are. Please forgive me. It's just that their mental health is not the best, so to speak. My name is Jorge, he said, holding out his hand. I shook his hand and introduced myself as well. And as we shook hands, I explained to him what was happening to me and what was the reason I was there. I then told him that I needed to use a phone, any phone. It was just so I could call my friends and have them come pick me up. Jorge invited me to his house to use our phone. While we were on our way to his house, Jorge told me that he lived with his wife Amalia and that she was happy to receive visitors, as it is not a common thing in that town. The place was so small that it was less than 5 minutes before we arrived at his house. Once there, we were greeted by Amalia, Jorge's wife, who was very kind to me, but her mental health didn't seem the best either. I guess that living in such an isolated place wasn't exactly a good way to keep brain cells active. I tried to use your phone, but it was on silent. There was no signal. I commented this to Jorge, already feeling desperate. Oh, what bad luck, man. Sorry, sometimes that happens. Jorge explained to me that this used to happen, that it was possible that the service would be restored soon, since whenever there was a signal drop, it wouldn't take more than a couple of hours before the phone would be back up. I couldn't believe my bad luck. Can I use another phone? Maybe your neighbor's? I asked, already guessing the answer. This is the only phone around here, I'm so sorry. If you want, you can wait upstairs. We have a nice guest room where you can rest and relax. Amelia will bring you some food and water. Jorge offered so kindly, I didn't see how to refuse his offer. Thank you, Zaranya, I replied simply, and went upstairs with him to the guest room. At least I could lie down and get some rest, which in fact I did. I was so tired that I fell asleep and woke up to someone's voice singing. It was already nighttime. What the hell is this? I said before screaming when I realized who was there. When I woke up, my room was full of old women chanting some kind of mantra. They were all exact duplicates of each other. They looked precisely like those other two twins I saw earlier that day. Suddenly, Jorge entered the room. I was still in shock and didn't have time to process it, but he was carrying a large butcher knife, and while smiling, he said, "Friend, you are lucky. You will be sacrificed in favor of our beloved god Satara. Don't worry, your soul will be saved. Only the chosen ones make it to our village." What the fuck? Logically, damn my luck. Now to top it all off, it turns out that he falls into the hands of a sect of demented elders. Realizing I was dealing with some sort of sacrificial coat, I didn't think twice and jumped out the bedroom window, smashing it to pieces. It definitely wasn't much of a fall, even though the grass kept me from hurting myself significantly, but I didn't care. I got up and ran like crazy, only to see other women coming from their houses walking towards me singing the same hellish song. They all looked the same as the others. Fortunately, they weren't running, and finally this time my luck was really changing for the better, so I started running back to the gas station. On the way, I saw another car parked there. It was one of my friends, who upon seeing me started waving his arms at me and running towards me. "Ray, dude, there you are, man. We were worried about you. You didn't show up when you were supposed to and your cell phone was off, so I came to see if I could find you on the way." I didn't even let him finish his explanation. "We need to get out of here right now," I said in desperation as I got into my friend's car, even before he did. I didn't say anything to my friend while we were on the road. It was only when we arrived that I told everyone about my experience. My friends found my story unbelievable, but the next day I reported everything to the police. To my utter disbelief, the authorities said that the small town I reported was completely abandoned. It had been empty for the last 10 years. I have no idea who those people were, and how those old women were clones of each other. But maybe that is the work of the so-and-so god Satara, who even today still haunts my nightmares. Many neighborhoods have haunted houses, quote unquote, and you know those houses that for some reason are abandoned and boarded up, and no one really seems to know why, and all the kids decide that they are haunted people and make up all kinds of weird stories about them to scare their friends, their siblings, and even end up believing those stories themselves. And even though they are probably just a bunch of nonsense, it still becomes legend among the neighborhood kids. However, in my neighborhood, we had something much better than a haunted house. We had a haunted hospital. It was an old hospital that had been abandoned in the 1940s. In the neighborhood, it was said to be a psychiatric hospital, but I was never really able to corroborate this firsthand. In my town, there was a bit of a legend surrounding this place, or at least among the kids. The story goes that this was a psychiatric hospital that had been in operation since the early 20th century, and that when it was closed, the patients were returned to society. One of the patients, a man they simply called Lucky, which, by the way, is not the smartest nickname we could come up with, but there you have it. The thing is, this man was never able to get rid of this place, as it was what he considered his home. So after the center closed its doors, he decided to return to live in it. Years later, he supposedly lived in the basement and would try to kill anyone who ever entered his home. Anyway, the kids were always daring each other to go in and spend time in the old hospital, but no one would do it. In fact, I once tried it to be a macho guy, but the closest I came to completing the challenge was climbing the door, and once I was on the other side, although I'm not too proud to admit it, I completely chickened out and went back up. There was one kid in the neighborhood who nevertheless accepted the dare, so this story is not firsthand, but it's almost scarier for me not to know what really happened. When I was a freshman in high school on Halloween, a group of us headed to the hospital to perform the usual dare. As usual, some of us would climb up to the door and start climbing. A kid I didn't really know well named Tommy made fun of us for being chicken shit and kept telling us that the stories about the lucky one were a bunch of hooey, that we were idiots for being so scared, and that about 6 of us had chickened out like little girls. This guy made fun of us all the time, until we finally got tired of his crap. We told him that unless he was willing to do the same thing he was criticizing us for, he needed to shut his mouth. We were sure that eventually he was going to chicken out too, but we were wrong. Tommy readily accepted our challenge, and without a second thought, he started to climb through the door, got to the end and jumped off the other side of the other side, then waved at us and, flashing a smirk, walked towards the hospital door. He even tried to open it, and that was more than any of us had ever tried. However, it didn't work. The door was completely sealed. This gave Tommy a chance to back out, but he did not. After looking around a bit, he found a large rock and used it to break one of the windows. We all got worried because we thought the noise would attract someone, but it didn't. It just so happened that Tommy broke the window glass and then carefully slid through the window, and once he did, he was out of our sight. All of us outside were quite surprised and also a little ashamed of ourselves, but the embarrassment we felt in no way compared to the paranoia that settled over us as we waited for Tommy to come back out. At first, we were impressed that he had come in. Then we were even more impressed that he had stayed there for quite some time. Although that feeling of being impressed began to fade and turn to concern as time went on, and he still didn't come out. The longer he didn't come out of the hospital, it was bad enough when it was 1 hour, and it was worse when it was 2 hours. It became absolutely distressing for us. It had been almost 4 hours and Tom still hadn't come out of the hospital. This really started to unsettle us, because we weren't sure why he hadn't come back out. But we definitely speculated a lot about it. Our first thought was that he was just taking his time to try to scare us. But as time went on, the worst thoughts settled in, and one that became more and more realistic, was that maybe Tommy found himself in there with the lucky one. If the legend was true, which we were absolutely convinced it was, he must have been furious that someone had invaded his home. Worst of all, Tommy's disappearance put us all in a really bad position. We weren't supposed to be hanging out in that old hospital. Our parents weren't forbidden them. But if Tommy didn't show up, we had to go to our parents and tell them what had happened. That meant confessing that we had been hanging out in the abandoned hospital and disobeying their orders, or to the police, which was even worse because this was private property. Neither of these options was going to be easy. When Tommy didn't show up, we went straight to the police. We probably should have gone to our parents first, because when the cops called our parents out of the blue, the situation got worse. Well, as you can imagine, we all got a big scolding in front of the cops and in front of the other parents. But while this was a bitter pill to swallow, it was nothing compared to what happened when the police arrived at the abandoned hospital to look for Tommy. The officers searched the entire hospital, the basement, the rooms, hallways, everything, and there was no sign of Tommy anywhere, but no sign of anyone else either. The police assumed that he simply left the building somewhere else and left us waiting for him outside, even though he had not returned home. The police told his parents that he was probably just playing his prank, but this did not reassure his parents, and even less so, seeing that it happened that night and he never got to sleep. Several days passed, and there was no trace of Tommy anywhere. He did not return the following week or the week after. When 2 days had passed since his disappearance, a team was assembled to search for him deep inside the old hospital facilities. This team searched meticulously everywhere, even the most hidden corners of the place. But they did not find Tommy, but to our surprise, there was no trace of the lucky one either. During the following days, the streets of the neighborhood were filled with posters with Tommy's picture. His face was everywhere with disappeared, written in big letters, but he never appeared. Later, photographs were placed in post offices, in stores, and his face appeared for a long time in the local newspaper. This happened in the 1980s, and to this day I have no idea what happened. Tom was never found. The guilt I've felt over the years is pretty bad, but it's far from it. As bad as the wandering was, I never saw Tom again, and I really don't know what happened to him when he went into that abandoned hospital. All I knew is that he was so happy he was too scared to go beyond the top of fence number 2, the barn. Thank you for living. Pictures were posted in the store post offices, but he never showed up. I almost gave up due to the relentless force of the elements, but every time I had been overwhelmed by the overwhelming loneliness of the snow-filled road, the debate in my head was already settled. No matter what, I would risk undertaking the journey through the storm in search of any chance of survival, because giving up was not an option. I figured at least I was warm for most of the trip. Suddenly I felt like I was walking through a pool of thick blue. I was completely exhausted by the third hour of my journey, and I can't even describe the feeling of relief when I saw a hut in the distance. I was elated to see this wooden oasis in this vast, snowy wilderness. My breathing became heavier as my car got closer to the building. I prayed to find a Samaritan on site who could give me help, and the closer I got, the further away from the reality of such expectations I became. The wooden house looked old and abandoned. I noted that it was well built as I turned off the ignition of my car. The pillars supporting the porch area were just as old, and the architecture gave away the fact that it had been one of these old stations that served to house one of the many exploration teams that have come to the North Pole. I prayed inwardly that I wasn't abandoned and could actually find help, because I really felt like I was about to collapse. "My God," I muttered as I opened the car door, and a blistering, snowy cold hit me with tremendous force. My teeth chattered and a slight shivering chill ran down my spine as I closed my car door behind me. I was uneasy from the cold, but I slipped the key into the door and clicked twice to make sure it was securely locked. I headed for the house in a hurry. A horrible smell assaulted my senses, which was intensified by the sharp sensation of cold. As I climbed the first step of the house, I knew exactly where the smell was coming from. It was the decaying stairs leading to the porch. I moved my feet carefully, but they still sank into the spongy snow pile of loose, rotting wood, and I almost slipped as I balanced on the crumbling platform. I stretched out my hands to keep my balance and sniffed once more. It was a foul smell. How disgusting, I whispered under my breath as I continued marching upward. Without realizing its origin or cause, the putrid smell became overwhelming the further up the house I went. It was a suffocating rottenness that overpowered all the senses beyond smell. I felt my skin tingle as well. My stomach pinched and I vomited a bitter-tasting liquid into my mouth as I walked towards the house. A strange sensation began to invade my body. It was like a feeling of being in danger. It was so overwhelming that for a moment, I thought of turning around and going back the way I came. But something beyond me compelled me to enter the old house. I braced myself for something horrible, but I perceived no risk to myself as I climbed the stairs. I walked to the doors as quietly as I could. Once I was there, I hesitated to open it or knock, and my mind whirled through a dozen chaotic thoughts before finally deciding to open it. "Hello?" I muttered, dazed and dizzy. The house echoed my question as I scanned the living room for a strange assortment of odd-looking furniture. I swallowed dryly and felt the bitter taste of the liquid still in my mouth, then quietly walked inside. I debated between leaving the door open or closing it behind me. Both ideas found appeal and danger in my mind. I thought it was better to leave it open than to close it, so I left it open, since this way I could easily escape if what I found in there wasn't exactly someone or something friendly. The house inside also emanated that terrible smell. It was the first thing I noticed. "Is anyone here?" I asked repeatedly as I walked further into the living room. That's when I heard a groan from the corner of the living room, and my ears immediately pricked up to catch the noise. I swallowed the major discomfort and cautiously walked towards where the groan was coming from. I walked cautiously, not knowing exactly what to expect, but my body was completely paralyzed before I got there, because I could see what looked like a broad, whitish hand stretched out on the floor. At that moment, all my senses were immediately alerted. The hand was not pale, but bluish white, so I assumed it was a person who had passed away a long time ago. This really overwhelmed me, for I didn't know if this person had been killed by the elements or if there was violence involved, and if so, I was looking at a possible crime scene, one where the possible assailant might still be around. Once again, I asked, "Is anyone there?" There was no answer. I called out again, and that's when I heard a faint noise finally emerge from around the corner. "Help me!" The voice moaned in pain, and as I rounded the corner, I came upon a man face down on the ground. He looked disheveled, but he didn't look bad or sick, and I immediately noticed he was still in pants with his belt tight around his waist. I was skeptical of his plea, so I remained in my place even though I felt empathy for what I perceived as suffering and could not immediately corroborate by simply looking at him. Once he couldn't hear my approach, he weakly shifted his position on the floor. He called out twice more and stretched his hands behind him to grope for me. I stood frozen in place, his frustration mounting as he groaned aloud in anguish. "Why, won't you help me?" the man pleaded. "Do you want to kill me? Who wants to kill you?" My mind raced, looking for an answer to that question. Why would he think someone had come to kill him? Who was this man, and what was his relationship to the other body across the room? Why would he stay in a place where there was a dead body, or worse, would he have had something to do with his death? They were too many unanswered questions, but I really wasn't sure if I wanted to find out. I gently backed away in search of the exit, but then he turned around and sighed, as if exhausted by the little charade. Full evidence of the horror hit me when I saw the 3 knives he had stuffed in his pants. He retrieved them with ease and stood up. I stood completely transfixed on the spot, as if hypnotized, watching the cinematic moment in my mind of what was about to happen to me. I was in a state of alertness, and I was really waiting for the moment when he would pull out one of the knives and pounce on me, pointing it at me to death. However, instead, the man, with a quickness that I was not expecting, pulled one of the knives from his belt and threw it straight at me. To this day, I don't know how he missed that shot. I don't even remember if I wrote it down. The thing is, thank God he didn't manage to hit me. The man cursed loudly. "You should never have been here." At that moment, I unfroze, turned around, and ran desperately to escape from this madman who didn't even know my name and still wanted me dead. At that moment, I was thankful that I had been cautious enough to leave the door open, as I simply ran out and through the doors without further ado. I ran down the stairs at full speed, almost falling to the floor when one of the steps broke under the weight of my boots. But I was going so fast that I guess the misstep couldn't stop my momentum. As I was running to my car at full speed, I felt a stabbing pain in my shoulder, and I knew immediately that one of his knives had hit me. I turned to look, and he was standing a step away from the stairs, yelling profanities at me. And seeing that I didn't stop, he ran down the stairs. Then I could see the exact moment when one of the steps broke, and the man fell backwards, hitting his head and becoming unconscious. Then I saw a small trickle of blood start to fall down the stairs and stain the snow red. If it had been another time, or another person, I would have certainly helped him. But in this case, I simply got in my car and drove through the snow, leaving this guy behind. Fortunately, I was able to find a station down the road, and yesterday I reported the incident, and these people helped me. I was able to call my teammates, who came to my rescue once the snowstorm subsided. A few days later, I learned that the guy had died, but I also learned that he had apparently killed the other person inside the cabin, who turned out to be the caretaker. Up to that time, no one knew he had passed away. I have always been a born explorer. Since I was a child, I felt a great curiosity to discover abandoned places. I lived in a small town where many people had migrated to the city in search of better job opportunities and quality of life. So it is not surprising that there were many properties that were uninhabited, and I do not know if this was what sparked my curiosity, or rather it was a lucky coincidence. The fact is that abandoned places attracted me like a magnet. There was something intriguing about those empty structures, the feeling that they held secrets that no one else knew, and that I longed to discover. My street was quiet and residential, but it had its own mystery. A huge abandoned house that was at the end of the block with dark windows, and a garden during its splendor years must have been the envy of the whole neighborhood. Since it was really beautiful, it had some beautiful amphorae that once functioned as fountains, and a beautiful structure that must have made that garden look like that of a palace, and the house itself was no less beautiful. This was a Victorian-style house that, despite the passage of the years and neglect, still looked imposing and spectacular. The neighbors whispered many stories about a tragic event that happened there years ago, but they had never told me the details. However, one hot summer day, armed with a flashlight and a high dose of 14-year-old bravery, I decided to explore the house on my own, as my friends did not want to accompany me, so I ventured out alone. The front door creaked open, and a wave of dust and dampness enveloped me. Inside was a maze of dusty rooms and dark corridors. The furniture was covered with white sheets, as if trying to hide something. I climbed the wooden stairs that creaked under my feet. When I reached the second floor, I stopped in front of a half-open door. The room was plunged into total darkness, although the light curtains let in a little light. Likewise, I turned on the flashlight and directed it inside. The room was spacious and furnished with antiques. A large canopied bed occupied the center of the room. As I scanned the place, I felt a cold draft that made my skin crawl. I looked toward the window and saw a dark shadow move behind the glass. At first, I thought it was my imagination playing tricks, but the shadow moved again, this time closer. My heart was pounding in my chest. I moved closer to the window and tried to get a better look, but a dense darkness suddenly hovered over the place and seemed impenetrable. Suddenly, the shadow transformed into a human figure. It was tall and thin, but with distorted facial features. Its eyes glowed brightly in the darkness. I felt a shiver run through my body. I stepped back again, but stumbled and fell to the ground. When I got up, the figure had disappeared. Terrified, I ran out of the room and down the stairs as fast as I could. The house seemed bigger and darker than ever. I tripped over a piece of furniture and fell again, this time hitting my head, and when I opened my eyes, I saw a dark figure standing at the end of the hallway. The figure slowly approached me, holding out his arms. I screamed at the top of my lungs and closed my eyes, thinking it was the end of me. But when I opened them again, I was lying on the floor of my room. The sun was streaming through the window, illuminating me completely. Everything around me indicated that it had been a nightmare, but deep inside me I knew it was not. I remember perfectly in detail what I had done that day, and also what I had seen and lived inside the abandoned house. To this day, I struggle with whether this was just a dream or I really lived it, and that spirit somehow sent me back to my house to confuse me. It's something I may never know for sure, but since then, every time I look towards the abandoned house, I can feel someone watching me from there. It's something I don't know how to explain, but I know it's real. So much so that sometimes, when I'm lying in my bed, I can swear I see a shadow moving behind the window, staring at me. After this incident, I continued to explore abandoned properties. It just took me a while to get back on track, but even so, I never wanted to venture back to that house.